Not all dry dog foods are created equal. Just because the bag says complete and balanced or premium doesn't necessarily mean your dog is actually getting everything they need. For example, protein from animal sources is not the same as protein padded out with plants. And if it isn't digestible, your dog cannot use it. And here's the kicker. A lot of kibble is bulked up with refined carbohydrates and vague meat meals that can mean heads, feet instead of real nourishing meat. Today, we are breaking down the marketing, the label, and the science. You'll know exactly which dry dog foods actually deserve a spot in your dog's bowl. But before we start, my name is Sam. I'm your dog's nutritionist, and it's important for you to understand that 1, I am independent, I am not beholden to anyone, and 2, that I only specialize in nutrition and that I'm quite a geek about it. Now let's start with a classic, and that is Pedigree. Pedigree dry dog food. Now the first ingredient here is ground whole grain corn. Now anytime you see corn or a highly refined carbohydrate as the first ingredient, your spidey sense should always tell you something, should alert you. Why? You want to be paying for meat, my friend. You want to be paying for meat in the supermarket, in the restaurant, and in pet food as well. Meat is what costs money, and so manufacturers will do a lot of gymnastics in order to give you the minimum required protein amount coming from animal sources. And so that's the overarching theme that I want you to get right now. Corn is the first ingredient. That is not a really good source of energy. I actually do not like it at all. The second one is meat and bone meal. And what does that mean? We don't know. They don't tell you. What meat is it? Is it chicken? Is it beef? Is it crocodile? Is it kangaroo? We don't know. They don't tell you. You know why? Because they deserve the right to change the food, the protein source from batch to batch to batch, and do not tell you. They are not complied. They do not want to tie themselves down. And so in that case, you will not be able to know what you're giving your dog. So if your dog has any sort of allergies or any sort of intolerances, you will not know what precisely you're giving the dog. And so what you want to do in pet food is something called traceability. You want to have traceability of ingredients. The third ingredient is corn gluten meal, and this is both a carbohydrate and a bit of protein there in corn gluten meal. Now this is a pretty horrible ingredient, is a cheap ingredient, and we do not like it. It doesn't have a high protein content, and the digestibility for dogs. We are feeding dogs here. We're not feeding us humans. We're not feeding omnivores. We are feeding more meat eaters than anything else, and those are dogs. So the notion that we can just feed dogs with highly refined carbohydrates, 67% highly refined carbohydrates, is for the birds, quite frankly. We then have animal fat, and once again, we do not know where that fat is coming from. And then we have soybean meal, ground whole grain wheat. And if you look at the kibble here is in different shapes and different colors. And so I want my dog's food to be nutritious. I do not want my dog food to look like Smarties. So if my dog's food looks like Smarties, I am not going to be touching that food. I absolutely do not want my dog to touch that. As you can see here, they put a nice picture of a steak and some peas and some carrots, but in reality, what you're feeding the dog is a bunch of highly refined carbohydrates that your dog is not going to be able to digest. The crude protein here is 21%, which is extremely low because not all that protein is going to be absorbed by the body. So in terms of quality, for your dog, this is really bad in my opinion. This sits at the bottom of the barrel, and I would never ever feed this to my dog on an ongoing basis. The second one is the Purina Pro Plan, and this is a renal diet, although a lot of these pet foods tend to be quite similar. And the reason why I have highlighted this particular one is because the first ingredient, once again, is corn. Whole grain corn as the first ingredient in a meat eater's food is not a very good use use of your money. The second one is rice, and then we have dried egg product, which eggs are a phenomenal source of protein. They are almost a complete protein. There is something called the PDCAAS, which is the protein digestibility corrected amino acid score, which is very, very geeky. However, it's very, very important whenever it comes to protein, because a lot of these people will tell you that, oh, corn or wheat are really, really good for protein and it's a really good protein source. It isn't. If you look at the science, it really does rank quite at the bottom in terms of protein quality, digestibility, and everything else. So do not let these people smear you with anything. And then I'm going to draw your attention to sugar, which it beggars belief that any dog food whatsoever would include sugar on its list of ingredients. And why do you think they put sugar in the ingredients list? It's because they want to make the food hyper palatable. It is because the food is potentially not very good quality. Guess what? Your dog does not find corn or rice appetizing. They do not find that high refined carbohydrates very, very appetizing. And so they have to put sugar and things like liver flavor here to make it a bit more enticing. And I do not know you, but I am completely against sugar in pet food. I do not care whether those are veterinary recommended diets. I don't care whether they say high protein. I don't care. I'm independent. And so I'm able to say what a lot of people will not say. And I do not want to feed my dog sugar. I do not want to give my dog sugar, just like I would not give a small toddler one of these biscuits because they contain sugar. They can say whatever they want on the front, but on the back, these things contain sugar. And it's the same old story. They have all the vitamins and nutrients and everything, and they are vetted by nutritionists and veterinarians and whatever. But at the end of the day, they are putting sugar in pet food. And that is something I simply cannot tolerate and cannot stand about pet food companies. And it really, really does beg a belief. A lot of people will disagree with me when it comes to veterinary prescription diets, but sugar and things like wheat gluten in very, very high quantities are an absolute no-go. And guess what? Whenever we have dogs with allergies, obesity, pancreatitis, diabetes, and a lot of these health issues that we see day in and day out, they stem from bad diets day in and day out. They are highly refined, ultra-processed kibble, which is poor quality for years and years on end. And those can lead to disaster. Let's look at another very popular food, which is the Purina Pro Plan Adult, and this is the sensitive skin and stomach. Anytime you see sensitive skin of stomach, this means that your dog is potentially allergic or reactive to something, and so it's important to you to be able to ascertain what the allergens, potential allergens might be. As a generic rule of thumb, you want to stay away from wheat, barley, corn, soy, things like meat and animal derivatives that are quite unspecific, because you want traceability of ingredients. You don't want anything which is highly refined. You want as intact sources of protein and ingredients as possible. We have salmon as the first ingredient, which is great. That is the first ingredient. It's a protein. It's salmon. Phenomenal. The second ingredient, however, is rice. Then we have barley, which once again is highly refined, and canola meal, which, I mean, rice, barley, and canola meal. And then we have oatmeal. So we have salmon as the first ingredient. That's a protein. That costs money. You know what doesn't cost money? Rice, barley, canola meal, and oatmeal. Those are far, far cheaper than salmon. And if you don't believe me, you can go into your supermarket and you can tell me. Now, it's important for you to understand as well that even though they say that it's salmon and rice, the salmon thing, it's true, but they also include beef fat. So once again, if you are trying to feed a dog with allergies, the best thing for you to do is choose one single protein, not two single proteins, because if your dog has a reaction to a particular protein, then we'll be able to eliminate it out. However, with salmon and beef, we don't know, and they include beef, of course, because it's a lot cheaper than salmon. Now, I don't have anything against beef and salmon being in the same recipe. I'm just against the marketing that they say here, salmon and rice And here they also put beef. That's my argument basically. And they also put barley, canola meal and oatmeal. Highly refined carbohydrates, and the crude protein here is 26%. Just to give you a bit of a context, you want the crude protein to be as close to 40% as possible. Why? There's something called the thermic effect of food, and this is important for you to understand. Whenever we eat protein, for every 100 grams of protein, we net out between 70 and 75% of that protein, because it takes the body a lot of energy to digest it. So even if you take in 100 grams of chicken breast, you aren't going to be able to get all of those nutrients coming from protein at once, because the body is going to take time to digest them, and that's quite laborious for your body, as it is for dogs' bodies. And so the thermic effect of food is very, very interesting here. The crude protein is 26%, out of which your dog might only be getting between 15, 16, 17, 18%. And if your dog is a meat eater more than anything else, you tell me if only 15, 16, 17, 18, 20% protein in their diet is adequate or not. In my opinion, it isn't. In terms of the thermic effect of food, you want protein to be as high as possible. And no, there isn't such a thing as too much protein. Your body either consumes protein or oxidizes protein. There isn't such a thing as storing protein as fat. There isn't such a thing. Let's look at Purina One, and this is the chicken and rice formula. Once again, we have chicken as the first ingredient, which is phenomenal. I love seeing that. We then have rice flour and corn protein meal and whole grain corn. So we have corn and rice as the main ingredients in this food. Why? We have something called ingredient splitting. So corn protein meal and whole grain corn, those are the same ingredient. However, they split them. And so you have chicken, which is a protein, and then you have rice flour, corn protein meal and whole grain corn. Listen, you want to be paying for protein coming from animal sources. That is what costs money, and that's what's adequate for your dog. There's something called leucine, which is the most important amino acid, and it's present in muscle protein synthesis and required for this particular job, which is extremely important. And it doesn't occur in corn, it's not prevalent in wheat, and it's not prevalent in any other plant protein. It's always much better to get your protein from animal sources. It's just better for your overall health. And once again, here we have the crude protein being 26%, which in my opinion is not adequate at all. You want to be paying for meat. You don't want to be paying for rice flour, corn protein meal, whole grain corn, whole grain wheat, chicken byproduct meal, which is okay. We then have soybean meal, and once again we have beef fat. So it's chicken and beef, not just chicken. And by the way, if you want to make your own dog food at home and you want the recipes to be good and nutritious, and you want to actually be in control over your dog's diet, why don't you get our easy DIY recipe book? It's a fantastic resource, and it puts you in the driver's seat, and it puts you in control over your dog's diet. You won't have to rely on manufacturers for anything. You source your own ingredients for your dog and you make your own dog food, and your dog is going to be very happy and very healthy. The link to the DIY recipe book is down below. It's really unmissable. We put a lot of thought into it, and it's an absolute game changer. Let's look into Blue Buffalo, which is a very popular food. We have the chicken and brown rice recipe. Anytime I see rice in a recipe, I don't like it. Why do I not like it? Because I want to be paying for meat. I don't want to be paying for cheap carbohydrates. If you go to the supermarket or you go out on a date and you order rice and someone else orders beef, which one is going to cost more? The beef, not the rice. So this is the same thing. What we have here is deboned chicken and chicken meal, which are phenomenal. The first two ingredients, even though they are ingredient splitting, are chicken. We then have brown rice, oatmeal, barley, and peas. So the thing with rice, oatmeal, barley, and peas is that they are highly refined carbohydrates, which is okay if they were a very, very low amount. However, they also include some protein. So a lot of the protein that you are going to get from these recipes is going to come from rice, from oatmeal, from barley, and peas. And those proteins aren't as digestible. They aren't as rich in leucine and many other very essential amino acids that your dog absolutely needs to build muscle and to prevent things like sarcopenia, which is the prevention of muscle mass as dogs age. And so it's really, really important for you to pay attention to these things. For example, here we have a crude protein of 24%, which is extremely low for a dog food. We have deboned chicken and chicken meal as the first two ingredients, and that is okay. But then we have brown rice, oatmeal, barley, peas, and then we have some chicken fat, and that is it. A lot of these recipe is literally just rice, oatmeal, barley, and peas, and those tend to expand when you cook them, whereas chicken shrinks when you cook it. You can try this at home. You can boil rice and you can cook chicken at the same time, and you'll be able to see that chicken shrinks whilst rice expands, and it doesn't really take a genius. So in my opinion, this is not a very good food. The crude protein is 24%, and the digestibility of that protein is not going to be very, very high. Why? Because of the thermic effect of food. So your dog is going to be getting the calories from the carbohydrates, because the carbohydrates in terms of thermic effect of food will not take as much for your dog to retain them, but they aren't going to be getting a lot of the nutrients and vitamins they need from those particular carbohydrates. It's too many. It's just too many carbohydrates. We want at least something balanced. We don't want 50-60% carbohydrates. You can argue with me that dogs can be maybe omnivorous in nature. That's okay. But that's one thing. And then another thing is to feed your dog 50-60% carbohydrates. I mean, who eats like that as a human being, let alone a meat eater more than anything else? One thing is to say that your dog is an omnivore, and that's okay, but to then put carbohydrates as the primary source of what you give them is an absolute non-starter. I do not believe that any veterinarian, if they were presented with those objective facts, would not agree with me. Let's look at something that I've never really come across, and this is next level. The first ingredient is beef meal. The second ingredient is grain sorghum. The third ingredient is chicken fat. We then have peas, chicken meal, blood meal, pea protein, dried beet pulp, and flaxseed and pork meal, hydrolyzed whole chicken. It's really interesting when it comes to super premium foods and with pet food in general, because there's always going to be trade-offs. There's always going to be trade-offs in everything in life. Let me tell you something. The crude protein here is 30%, which is higher than normal. Still quite low in my opinion, but it's higher than normal, higher than the others that we have reviewed so far. And I like some of these ingredients. I like beef meal, I like chicken fat, I like chicken meal, I don't like blood meal, and I do like the chicken and the fish meal. But pay attention to things like blood meal and pea protein. I want to be paying for protein coming from chicken or beef or whatever. And in my opinion, a lot of the protein you see here isn't very digestible because it comes from peas. Although this is not a bad option, actually. Let's look at the Animals Like Us raw mix. And this is an interesting looking package. We have lamb lung, lamb tripe, lamb liver, lamb. We have poultry meal, we have fava beans, we have lamb heart, we have tapioca starch, that's a thickening agent, pea protein, canola meal, peas, poultry fat, fish oil, beef hydrolysate. We have salt, which every single bloody recipe in the United States contains added salt, which is not something I agree with. However, it's so prevalent for palatability that you can't really get away from it. It is what it is. This is a pretty decent food. So lamb lung, lamb tripe, lamb liver, lamb. We then have poultry, which is unspecific. We don't know what specific bird that is. Fava beans, not a massive fan of them because some of the protein from fava beans is not very digestible, and a lot of the pea protein here and canola meal and more peas I'm not a massive fan of. This is an okay food if you can get past the fava beans, the poultry fat, the peas, and the pea protein, and the canola meal. The rest of the ingredients tend to be okay, they tend to be decent. The crude fat tends to be a bit low in my opinion for lamb. Lamb tends to be quite a fatty meat, and so I don't really understand why the crude fat here is so low. You shouldn't be afraid of fat in terms of using it as energy, as your dog being able to use it as energy. We can all use fat for energy. This is called the Randall cycle, and it's how your metabolism prioritizes between carbohydrates and fats. Now, dogs run preferably on fat instead of carbohydrates. That's why a lot of the highly refined carbohydrates in high amounts that we give our dogs aren't very good, because it goes against their nature in my opinion. However, this is not a bad food at all. Let's look at kibbles and bits. And once again here we have some steak, we have some carrots or peas or whatever. It says crunchy and meaty. However, it looks like Skittles here or M&Ms here. And that's not something I like. Let's look at the ingredients list. The ingredients list is corn as the first ingredient. I knew it. I knew it. We then have soybean meal. We then have beef and bone meal, okay? Whole wheat, animal fat, corn syrup, wheat middlings, and other things that I would never give my dog, like caramel color. And a lot of these things look like chocolate bars in my opinion. If you look at M&Ms, for example, they all have different colors. Do we all understand, do we have an understanding that chocolate with different colors is not very good for you long term if you overconsume calories and if you only eat M&Ms and things of a similar nature? Okay, now why would I give my dog caramel color for very long periods of time alongside corn, soybean meal, beef and bone meal, whole wheat, and animal fat? I would never. The crude protein is 19%. The crude fat here is 8% and 12%. So I'm not really sure which one it is or if it's both together. However, this food is very, very high in carbohydrates, and you want to be paying for meat, not carbohydrates. This is an F. Let's look at Cesar, and we have a very cute looking dog here and some meat and veggies which are very, very healthy. What do the ingredients say? They say chicken, which is great. We then have whole grain corn, ground wheat, meat and bone meal, which is very, very unspecific. And then we have brewer's rice and animal fat, followed by corn gluten meal. So those aren't... And sugar! Hold on, we have a pet food with sugar. Anytime I see a pet food with sugar, it's laughable at this point. If you eat sugar and you overconsume calories and all you eat is a high refined, ultra processed diet and loads of salt and loads of sugar in it, are you going to be healthier or are you not going to be healthy long term? You're not going to be healthy long term. What gives you the impression that feeding your dog something similar with sugar, with salt, and ultra processed for a very long time is going to be good for your dog? It is not. So this is, in my opinion, absolute garbage. Let's look at addiction, and this is the Wild Islands New Zealand Highland Meats recipe. The ingredients are lamb, beef, lamb liver, beef tripe, beef meal, eggs, pea protein, fava beans, beef fat, green peas, tapioca, lamb meal, flaxseed, yellow peas, kiwi fruit, natural flavor, etc, etc. We have manuka honey. The crude protein is 40%. Now, do not let them fool you with a high protein content because of pea protein, and we do not really know how much of that protein is pea protein, and we have things like peas and yellow peas. But all in all, this is a very acceptable food. The crude protein is high, albeit I'm very, very wary about the pea protein, but the eggs look good, the beef meal looks good, the beef tribe looks good, the lamb, the beef, the lamb liver, they all look good. They're very, very nutritious. Liver is incredibly nutritious for dogs. It contains so many nutrients and vitamins. It's a superfood. I mean, people were eating raw liver after World War II because it was extremely nutrient dense and very, very cheap. Now, obviously, it's not very palatable, it's not very nice, but people to this day who eat liver, albeit not raw, and they cook it, they get a lot of those nutrients and vitamins. Let's look at Canine Caviar. Canine Caviar, venison meal, split peas, lamb fat, coconut, alfalfa, coconut oil, kelp, dry lactobacillus, fermentation products. So they include, or they want to include, some probiotics and prebiotics. The thing with prebiotics, for example, and probiotics is that if you puree some leafy greens, if you puree fruit and veg, you'll be able to absorb the polyphenols, which are all the nutrients and vitamins that you need. And those are incredibly beneficial for your gut microbiome. And it's the same for our dogs. So anytime you see fruit and veg in a dog's food, if it's pre-prepared and it's still alive and fresh, phenomenal for your dogs. Now that's one thing, but putting say 20 or 30% vegetables in a dog's food, that's a bit too much. I'm talking very, very small amounts. The crude protein here is 27.5% and the crude fat is a healthy 18%. Now, venison meal, venison is an expensive meat. Split peas is the second ingredient, which I do not like. And then we have lamb and things that I once again do not really like. For peas to be so prevalent in such a limited ingredient recipe is a bit of a stretch. However, you are going to have to trade off certain things because otherwise it's just not going to be on. It's not going to be possible for you to find the perfect food. You are going to have to make compromises unless you get our own DIY recipe book and you take control over your dog's food. But again, I digress. The link is down below. That way you can make your own meals and then you can take control fully over your dog's food. But otherwise, if you buy something commercially, for yourself, actually, you are going to be making sacrifices and trade-offs. Let's look at Annamaet, and this is option. Now, it's $107 or $121 at the time of recording. Salmon meal, brown rice, millet, raw oats, lamb meal, pearl barley, canola oil, crude protein 24%. No, this is a no from me. I mean, some of the ingredients here are pretty okay. Salmon meal, it's good. We have lamb. Okay, I want to be paying for lamb. I want to be paying for fish. I want to be paying for tomato, apples, etc., etc. But come on, brown rice, millet, rolled oats, pearl barley, and you're charging me $120? 24% crude protein. That's a bit of a mockery in my opinion. We have Orijen Amazing Grains. I mean, the Amazing Grains label is a bit weird because the pet food industry has moved away from grains and the label grain free still carries a lot of weight. Guess what? A lot of dogs were getting sick off the back of high refined carbohydrates and a lot of these grains. And so manufacturers caught onto this and they were like, right, okay, no more grains and we're going to develop grain-free products. And to this day, you, the consumer, now knows a bit more about dog food and you try to avoid grains when you can. Now, for them to go against the grain, pun intended, it's a bit weird. However, I'm not against grains if they constitute, say, 5% of your dog's diet, if they constitute, say, 10% of your dog's diet. Let's say you are constrained in budget and you are trying to find a food and you are trying to do the best for your dog, or you are cooking for your dog or whatever. And guess what? You want to stretch the meat with some grains or with some whatever, and they constitute, or rice, for example, even though I don't think it's biologically appropriate for dogs, and that is 10% of your dog's diet. Okay, that's okay. It's only 10%. It's not 50%. So anyway, whole mackerel, whole herring, salmon, pilchard, flounder, monkfish, mackerel meal, herring meal, oat groats, millet, sunflower oil, blue whiting meal, pollock meal, so natural salmon flavor, not the actual salmon, but salmon flavor. This has always been a pretty good food. The crude protein is 38%, and you get some very exotic fish here. Mackerel, herring, salmon, pilchard, monkfish, and this is a pretty good food. If you are happy giving your dog some grains, this is great. If you don't want to give your dog grains, do not buy this food. All in all, this is a pretty expensive bag of food. It's $125, and for $125, you could arguably make your own food with fresh chicken and fresh thighs and whatever else and some like cheap vegetables, and that can save you a bit of money, you know. So whenever it comes to premium kibble, you have to ask yourself, am I happy paying $100, $120, $140 for a bag of dog food? Or do I look at hybrid feeding? Do I look at now me making my own food? Or do I look at a raw food? Do I look at a cooked food? Do I look at some wet food and I give my dog wet and some kibble? Because let me tell you something, kibble is not perfect. Kibble is not perfect at all. It's ultra processed all the time. You're giving your dog 2 or 3 meals per day, all day, every day, forever potentially. And a lot of dogs get chronically dehydrated because they don't drink enough water. If you live in a southern state, in an arid state like Texas, California, or you live in Delhi, or you live in Spain or whatever, feeding your dog enough moisture with their food is going to be critical. So at some point, I don't know where that point is for you, but at some point you might say, that's a bit too much. That's too premium for me. I can't afford that. So I'm going to buy this, which is maybe a low quality kibble or a lower quality kibble, and I am going to supplement $50 a month or whatever with my own food, and I'm gonna buy like some chicken and some fish and whatever, and I'm going to give my dog some fresh food. And that, in my opinion, is one of the best things you can do for your dog. For example, and I'm gonna go off a tangent here, if you give your dog eggs, chicken eggs, quail eggs, duck eggs, they can be raw, or if you are too worried about salmonella or E. coli or whatever, you can boil them and you can give them to your dog. An egg is a phenomenally cheap source of protein, and it will turbocharge your dog's health in terms of protein. Eggs contain everything to harness life, and they are so good for dogs and so good for us that I do not see any downside unless your dog is allergic to eggs or reactive to eggs, and that's extremely rare. I'm talking 0.1% of dogs might have some sort of intolerance to eggs or whatever, but introducing eggs to your dog's diet, fresh or boiled or whatever, is phenomenal. It bumps up the protein content, and I cannot encourage you enough to do it for your dog. Let's look at Royal Canin, and this is the selected protein and potato and whitefish. Now, the first ingredient is potato, which I don't like in pet food. I want to be paying for meat. We then have fish meal and potato protein. So potato and potato protein. So potato is part of the first 3 ingredients. That's not good. We then have chicken fat, which is commonly used as a binder. So chicken is prevalent in pretty much everything in pet food. Why? Because it's the cheapest, because it's the most available actually. A lot of dog foods or dog treats will contain chicken fat as a binder, and they will not disclose it on the front, but it will be listed on the ingredients list. Why? Because it's so cheap and it's so prevalent. So if your dog has any sort of allergy, any sort of gut issue or whatever, once again, you need to pay attention to the ingredients, just like you would with a baby. You would see whether what you're giving them contains lactose or they don't contain lactose. Screw the vitamins and minerals and the nutrition and all these labels that veterinarians and people on the internet want you to pay attention to. Does the food that you're giving your baby with a lactose intolerance contain lactose, or it doesn't contain lactose? That is the question. So ingredients is what matters. If you have a dog with a sensitivity, with an allergy or whatever, it doesn't matter if the food has been formulated by veterinarians, recommended by veterinarians, or has all the vitamins and energy and whatever else people want you to believe. No, the ingredients. If your dog has any sort of health issue, diabetes, pancreatitis, food heals the body, and that is it. Food is medicine. That is it. Ultra processed kibble and ultra refined carbohydrates and things like potato protein, which is very undigestible, is not good for dogs. It simply isn't good for dogs. It's not going to be doing anything. It's not going to be doing anything. It's not going to be killing your dog, but it's not going to be nourishing your dog. It's not going to be anything. It's not going to be doing anything to your dog. Is your dog going to die because you put them on Royal Canin? Of course not. Your dog is not going to die. Is your dog going to get any nutrients and vitamins from potato and potato protein, which has a very low protein digestibility corrected amino acid score? No, of course not. What are we giving the dog here? We're not giving the dog anything. What? Powdered cellulose? We're giving the dog artificial fiber, cellulose. Come on, give me a break. This is not a good food at all. I don't care what anyone says. Let's look at Victor, and this is the ocean fish formula with salmon. The first ingredient here is fish meal. We then have grain sorghum, peas, chicken fat, whole grain millet, dehydrated salmon, whole grain brown rice, yeast culture, dehydrated alfalfa meal, etc, etc. We have a bag of dog food which is going to cost you a fine $160, and they want you to pay for grain sorghum, for peas, for millet, and for whole grain brown rice. The crude protein is 24% here. Listen, I would give happily the middle finger to this company, to this food, and any foods like this. It beggars belief the cheek some manufacturers have to tell you that this food is premium, this food is amazing, we only use the finest ingredients and all that rubbish, and then they give you 24% protein, right? They don't give you 40% protein. They don't give you the finest ingredients. They give you okay ingredients, or they give you rubbish ingredients, or they give you subpar ingredients, or whatever. It literally beggars belief. I just cannot fathom how companies do this and go largely unchecked. However, you're in luck because I'm independent. And by the way, if you want to feed your dog better, you should maybe consider making your own dog food. A DIY recipe book puts you in control. Let me tell you something, it's going to cost you far less than $160 per month, especially if you compare our recipe book to a lot of these foods, which they want to make you pay for things that, it actually beggars belief. So yeah, the DIY recipe book, we highly recommend it. It puts you in control over your dog's diet, and guess what? If your dog has any allergies or any sort of dietary requirements, you'll be able to check, what am I giving the dog? Is the dog healthy? However, you will not need to tweak anything, because if you feed your dog with the DIY recipe book, your dog will be a lot healthier and they will get everything, a good rotation of meats, a good rotation of different vitamins and minerals. I cannot encourage you to do that enough if you are that way inclined. And if you don't want to make your own dog food, that's absolutely fine as well. Let's look at Farmina Vet Life. This is an extremely popular food, Farmina. And this seems to be like a veterinary prescription diet of some sort. Now, listen here, right? Listen here. Veterinary prescription diet. The first ingredient is rice starch. The second ingredient is hydrolyzed fish. Now, why do some veterinary prescription diets contain hydrolyzed something? Hydrolyzed chicken or hydrolyzed fish or hydrolyzed whatever. Let me tell you something. Hydrolyzation is a process of breaking down molecules with water so that the body can absorb them without getting the body to flag them as potential allergens. So your dog is going to be able to get some of the benefits from that hydrolyzation and from that protein. But let me tell you something, it's yet another ultra processing that happens within the ultra processing in kibble. So it's yet another chemical concoction. Rice starch, hydrolyzed fish, herring oil, powdered cellulose, and that is it. So you're paying for rice, you're paying for hydrolyzed fish, and you're paying for herring oil. okay, and powdered cellulose. The crude protein is laughable at 17.5%. The crude fat is 14%, and the rest, pretty much, apart from 9% moisture, which is very low, as you would expect from any kibble, to be fair to them. It's carbohydrates. It's what? 60, 70, 50 odd percent carbohydrates, highly refined carbohydrates. What are you paying for? Rice starch? Why not just give your dog some rice starch, a little bit of fish, and a couple vitamins and minerals, and you save yourself $150? You know, why don't you do that and save yourself $150? That's a very substantial saving, in my opinion. I think a lot of these veterinary prescription diets take the mickey so much. It beggars belief, and you, the consumer, you have no idea. You get recommended this, you see this on a forum, it works for someone, and you try it. You're giving your dog very high amounts of rice starch. So is your dog going to be putting on calories, receiving calories? Yeah. Is your dog going to be getting the nutrients and the vitamins? Yes, because they are synthetically added. Look at all these synthetically added vitamins and minerals. So you're giving your dog rice starch, only 17.5% coming from hydrolyzed fish, and the rest is rice starch. You are spending out of those $150, maybe $100 in rice starch. This literally beggars belief. I can't fathom how some manufacturers have the cheek to do this to people. I really don't understand. I will never stand for that. Let's look at Bully Max, and I mean, look at that intimidating dog there. The ingredients: chicken meal, brown rice, chicken fat, ground grain sorghum, whitefish meal, natural flavor, pearl barley. What is the price of this thing? $150, 30% crude protein. Listen, this is not a terrible food. We have chicken meal, chicken fat, and we have whitefish meal. But then we have pearl barley, we have ground grain sorghum, and brown rice. And that doesn't cost $150 in my book. Absolutely not. No, it's not a bad food, but for $150, come on, crude protein 30%, what are we playing at? What are we playing at? Let's look at natural balance, and this is limited ingredients. So guess what? It's not just me looking at ingredients. It's not just me saying, hey, look at the ingredients. Look at the very hefty list of ingredients. It's not just me, it's manufacturers as well. They also are looking at these things and saying, hey, how about we put that in our marketing, because people are starting to notice how dodgy a lot of those other companies tend to be. A lot of those veterinary prescription foods and a lot of those foods. Let's have a look. Let's put limited ingredient here. So it's not just me, folks. We have salmon meal, sweet potatoes, dry yeast, tapioca starch, canola oil. So the price for this is $145, limited ingredient. We have salmon and salmon meal, and then the rest is sweet potatoes, tapioca starch, and that's pretty much it, really. So crude protein 24%. Do not think you should waste your money. I don't think you should waste your money at all with this food. Don't waste your money. I wouldn't buy this. I'm not here to bull you. I'm here to tell you that you're paying for sweet potatoes and potatoes, and that is it. And you want to be paying for more salmon, baby. Give me more salmon. Give me double the amount of salmon, and then this will be worth $150. But before that, absolutely not. Let's look at Jinx. This is the Atlantic salmon and sweet potato and carrot recipe. So the ingredients are salmon, turkey meal, chickpeas, lentils, ground peas, chicken fat, sweet potato, carrots, natural flavor, fish meal, potato protein, crude protein 27%. The price is $47. Listen, for $47, this is not a bad food. Listen, I don't like it. It contains lentils, ground peas, sweet potato protein, and it contains a lot of carbohydrates. But for $50, for less than $50, add some fresh chicken to the food, buy some turkey giblets, buy some salmon for your dog, buy some eggs, buy something else to go with this food, and why not? Save yourself money. A lot of those $150 bags of food are pretty poor compared to this one. So is this one perfect? It isn't. Is this one adequate? It is adequate, in my opinion. It contains coconut meal, whatever that means. I'm not really sure why it says coconut meal and not coconut oil. Potato protein, not very digestible. Brews dry yeast. I'm not by any means saying that this food is stellar. It isn't. However, for the price, why not? Taste of the Wild, High Prairie. We have water buffalo. We have lamb meal, chicken meal, sweet potatoes, pea flour, chicken fat, egg product, roasted bison, roasted venison, beef, natural flavor, fish meal, sole, water buffalo, lamb meal, chicken meal, sweet potatoes, pea flour, chicken fat, crude protein 32%, crude fat 18%. This is a very acceptable food. The price is $60. $60, folks. $60. 32% protein. Is it perfect? It isn't perfect. Does it have some exotic meats? Yes. Buffalo. We have bison. Is it not the same? Bison and buffalo? Venison, buffalo, chicken, bison. Why not? Why? $60? Come on. $60. $60. $60. $60. 32% crude protein. Peas, pea flour. Not a fan. Ingredient splitting. Sweet potatoes. Low glycemic carbohydrate. Easy to digest. Good source of fiber. We have 4 or 5 proteins there for less than $60. Yeah, I like it. I don't know who manufactures this, but I like it. Let's look at Hills. This is sensitive stomach and skin. Let's have some fun. So the first 2 ingredients are chicken and chicken meal. Yes, Hills. Absolutely amazing. Well done. We then have yellow peas and cracked pearl barley and brown rice, brewer's rice, and whole grain sorghum. So the first ingredient, which is 2 ingredient splitting, chicken and chicken meal, we then have yellow peas, cracked pearl barley, brown rice, brewer's rice, and whole grain sorghum. That's 5-2, yeah? Yellow peas, cracked pearl barley, brown rice, brewer's rice, and ground sorghum. Yes, so 5-2. Crude protein 20%. We then have chicken liver flavor and chicken fat. So if this food, which is $83, cost maybe $30 or $40, that maybe would be acceptable. Maybe. But the crude protein is 20%. You're paying for a bunch of highly refined carbohydrates. This is not a good food. Once again, if your dog has a sensitivity, do you want to be giving them highly refined carbohydrates, too many carbohydrates? Do you not want to give them more protein, which is what costs money, which is what builds muscle, which is what keeps muscle, which is what's important? People who eat protein and prioritize protein live healthier lives. You know why? Because we have now thousands of randomized controlled trials, peer-reviewed. We have umbrella reviews. We have epidemiology. We have all these studies pointing to the fact that more protein is beneficial. And why do you think everyone has lost their rag in terms of protein? Everyone is protein crazy. Why do you think people are protein crazy? Because they identify it's so important. And so for dog food companies to be putting only crude protein 20% is not going to be all digestible. So your dog is going to get maybe 15%, maybe 12% of that crude protein. I don't know, the thermic effect of food, you know. Yellow peas, cracked pearl barley, brown rice, they will contain some protein, and that protein is a lot less digestible than the protein coming from chicken. And so this is not a food I would waste my money. Absolutely not. And it contains pork liver flavor. So it says chicken, doesn't it, on the front? It says chicken and barley. Okay, so it's chicken and barley. And then it's pork liver. It contains pork liver flavor. So it's not just chicken, it's pork as well. Let's look at Merrick. Limited ingredient: deboned salmon, salmon meal, brown rice, oatmeal, barley, sweet potatoes, canola oil. Crude protein 21%. Very, very low. What's the price of this bag of food? This is 75. This is too low. 21% protein, and we have salmon and salmon meal and brown rice and oatmeal and barley and sweet potatoes. Come on, come on, come on. Who are we talking to here? Who are we talking to here? I don't like this. This is overpriced, in my opinion. I know dog food can be very tribal. I think people have very, very strong opinions, and I am the first one to have a very strong opinion in terms of pet food. Why? I have studied nutrition. I geek out about nutrition quite a lot, and I read scientific papers. I read a lot of research and I peer review things, and let me tell you something, it's something that might not work for everyone, and it's something very tribal, as I say. However, as I said, I'm independent, I'm not beholden to anyone. I'll hopefully always want to give you my own thoughts, my own way of seeing pet food and whether something is good, bad, or whatever. And if that's cool, that's cool, and if that's not cool, that's not cool. And if you want to let me know in the comments why I am stupid or whatever, that's fine. Actually, that's absolutely fine. I do not mind that at all. Now, DIY recipe book. If you want to make your own dog food, I highly recommend it. You can download it in the link down below. It's a phenomenal source. It puts you in control. You won't see any sugar, any meat and animal derivatives, none of that nonsense. You will be put in the driver's seat. You can procure different things for your dog. You can buy, you can source different meats. Once you get a grip with the thing, you can tweak them. You can do whatever you want. I think they are pretty good, and so let me know what you think in the comments, and I highly encourage you to watch this video next, because what I have to say with regards to dog food is extremely important.